everybody, it's Gina and welcome to the Library Mouse. If you're new here, welcome. Hopefully you like it enough to stick around and subscribe and comment, because I love reading everybody's comments and building a community, which is really why I'm here today. If you saw my post in the community, you'll see that this week has been really hard. My husband has been in the hospital. He's still in the hospital. It was emergency, from urgent care to the emergency room. We're waiting to find out results of some biopsies. It's very scary. And, you know, when you're waiting, your mind just goes to a million dark places. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to do some YouTube videos and try to distract myself a little bit. And I have not done my August wrap-up. I was working on a vlog when everything went down, because we went down to Pennsylvania to surprise my mom for her 94th birthday, and we had a really good time. Maybe at some point I will share that. But anyway, here I am for my August wrap-up. Let's get started. So, one book that I did read, I gave it 4 stars this month, is Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister by Gregory Maguire. He is also the author of Wicked. So this book is his imaginary tale of what happened with the ugly stepsisters and Cinderella. And he definitely had an interesting take on what he feels may have happened. So the ugly stepsisters in this account are Iris, who is the heroine, and her sister Ruth, and the 2 sisters and their mother arrive in Holland from England, where they have run away after it sounds like the killing of their father. They are destitute. They have no money. They arrive in this town called Haarlem, and they are taken in by a master painter. And he doesn't really pay them. He doesn't pay the mother, but she is given room and board for working. And eventually, because he is a painter, he has someone come who is visiting, who wants some paintings done. And he sees Iris and her sister and the mother, and he thinks that she would be a good companion for his daughter, who is very different, beautiful, very beautiful. This is supposed to be Cinderella in the book, or in the fairy tale. His daughter is the girl that he takes the 2 ugly stepsisters and their mother and offers the mom a job, and he wants Iris to be a companion to his daughter, Clara. And Clara doesn't really want a companion. She's a little antisocial. She believes that she is a changeling. And what happens is loosely based on the Cinderella tale, although Clara wanted to be Cinderella. She wanted to work in the kitchen. She wanted to be left alone. She didn't want to have anything to do with society or people. The mother, the stepmother, kind of worms her way into this position after Clara's mother dies. And you can probably guess that it was not a natural death. And it goes on with the tale of Clara, Iris, who you really like in the book. She is a good protagonist. She is not given to the meanness that she is in the fairy tale of Cinderella. It really examines Holland at a time when tulips were just starting to come into the notice of Holland, and people were making big money off tulip bulbs, which is how the Cinderella's father, Clara's father, has made his fortune, by selling tulip bulbs and getting people to buy tulip bulbs. So there's a huge business in it. It is very, very interesting. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it at first, but I did. I liked this book better than I liked Wicked. I got halfway through Wicked and I stopped reading it because it was confusing. This book is confusing at first. But the more you read, the more you really get into the tale. So 4 out of 5 for Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. So the next 2 books I am not going to really talk about. I'm just going to say I finished them both for a little series that I want to do on middle grade books. So I read Fish in a Tree and I read Starfish. I gave them both, I gave them both 4s. They were both very, very good, but I will talk more about them in a future video. But if you have middle grade readers, if you are a teacher who teaches with middle graders, or you just enjoy middle grade chapter books, they're very, very well written. They were good. So another book that I read in August was, I believe, no, it was one of 2 5 stars that I read in August. This was a reread for me. I read it a long time ago and I loved the movie and I loved the book then, and I love it just as much on the reread, and that is The Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood by Rebecca Wells. I do have my copy. I think it's downstairs. I wound up buying it, I believe, at a thrift store. This book is just wonderful. It tells the tale of Mullaly, and she is a playwright who is interviewed by a magazine, and in it, some of her words are taken a little out of context, and she pretty much says that her mother was a tap dancing child abuser, and her mother takes offense at that, naturally, and disowns her. And her mother is Vivi, and the book goes back and forth between Vivian's life in the 1930s Louisiana, and then Mullaly's life in the 90s. After all of this happens with the newspaper article, the magazine article, and her mom disowning her, she cuts off her engagement and she kind of runs away to this cabin that they have. And she goes there, a friend's cabin, and she just wants to kind of get away and like really contemplate life. And it's the story of mother-daughter relationships, but it's also the story of the Yayas, her mother and her mother's 3 best friends. So the best friends stories take place in the 1930s, and these friends band together and they bring Sita a scrapbook, and it's The Divine Secrets of the Yayas. And through looking at all of the photos and ticket stubs and memory, things come flooding back to Mullaly and what was going on in her mother's life. She was an alcoholic. She was in a mental institution for a little bit. There was one episode of child abuse in the story, and she comes to terms with her mother and the way her mother was raised, and what her mother went through that made her the person that she was. And so it's a lot of mother-daughter relationship, but it's also a book about friendship and family and how friends are family and how nobody's life is perfect and nobody is perfect, even though you try. And how she comes to terms with how her mother treated her and the knowledge that she still loved her and she still loves her mother. And it's just such a good book. And you are so invested in all of the characters, even when they do things that you don't like. So I definitely, if you haven't read it, it's a really, really good book. And the movie was very good too. It has Sandra Bullock in it, so it can't be bad, right? So another book that I enjoyed was The Islanders by Meg Mitchell Moore. This was a really, really good summer beach read. It was not super heavy. It had a little romance. Everybody had a happy ending, and it was just a nice, relaxing read. Very quick to get through. I enjoyed it a lot. I gave it a 4. So The Islanders really focuses on 3 different characters who are all on Block Island. So one of the characters is a young mom named Lou. She's there because her somewhat overbearing mother-in-law rented them, her family, a house for the summer. And she's there with her 2 little boys. Her husband comes back and forth because he's working. And she has a secret job, and she has not told anyone yet. However, she's become slightly famous because of this job, and she's not going to be able to keep the secret for long. The other character is a single mom named Joy. She's the owner of a whoopie pie bakery called Joy Bombs. She has a daughter who's 13. She came here, as a single mom, worked her way up, started this business, and she's in for a little competition from a food truck this summer. And she finds a little romance too. And then there's Anthony. Anthony is a famous writer who has a famous writer for a father, and he's there to hide out. He's trying to find some place to hide out, get away from society, because he has had a little bit of a scandal for a writer, and his father is extremely angry with him. He's embarrassed by him, and Anthony is trying to figure out what he's going to do. So it was a good book. It was a good beach read. Definitely the perfect book for August. So check it out. It is The Islanders by Meg Mitchell Moore. Okay, next book was a 5 for me. It is Mrs. Everything by Jennifer Weiner. A lot of people must have liked this book because it was New York Times 100 Notable Books of 2019. It was one of Good Housekeeping's 50 Best Books of the same year, and also one of NPR's Best Books of 2019. So kind of gives you a little bit of a background on how good this story is. I loved it. It's historical fiction. It goes from the 1950s to modern day, following the lives of 2 sisters, Jo and Beth Kaufman, from the time they were little girls in 1950 Detroit, living in like your picture perfect 1950s household, to their adulthood up through middle-aged women. And Jo is a tomboy. She's kind of rebellious. Her little sister Beth is really sweet and pretty and a good girl. And they carry on that way in those roles until there's an incident with Beth's uncle. And that incident with her uncle kind of sets her on a different trajectory. She begins having an eating disorder because of it. She changes the way she behaves. She becomes the wild child. And she is, very into the hippie counterculture lifestyle of the 1960s. Whereas Joe takes a different path. Now with Joe, you have to remember the time period. It's the 1950s and 60s, and Joe realizes that she is not attracted to boys, she's attracted to girls. But that was not acceptable then, and she needs to hide it. So she gets married, and she becomes your perfect little suburban housewife. And Beth knows about her sister, and she's kind of frustrated with Joe settling for this lifestyle that she was always so against. And it really examines the sister relationship. It's a great commentary on being a woman in that time period compared to even like now. And family relations and family secrets and what they do to families. So it was just a really, really great book. Highly recommend Mrs. Everything by Jennifer Weiner. So the next book on my list was one that I wanted to read, a book from my childhood that I remembered very fondly. And I just kind of wanted to read it as an adult. And I was going to do one a month, so we'll see if I actually follow through with that. But this month I read All the Kind Family by Sydney Taylor. I loved this book as a child. My sister also loved this book. So it follows the Jewish family of 5 sisters and their little brother living around the turn of the century in New York City. It was just such a great series. I loved anything old-fashioned when I was a kid. And so I just loved looking at the illustrations and their cute dresses and their shoes. Also, what intrigued me was that they were Jewish, and I had no clue what it was like to be Jewish. I had no Jewish friends, and I thought all of their traditions and their holidays were very interesting. I loved reading about them. And the other thing that I loved about this book, or this series of books, because there's many. There's All the Kind Family, All the Kind Family Uptown, All the Kind Family Downtown. And each book, it follows the family as they get older and older and older. But because it has 5 sisters and a little brother, and it exactly matched my grandmother's family. My grandmother was born in 1907 in Baltimore, Maryland, and she was one of 5 sisters. There was my great aunt Mabel, there was Wilhelmina, there was Irene, there was Ruth, that was my grandmother, and there was Elsie. And then there was John, and it was the exact same setup in All the Kind Family. And I just thought it was so cool. I remember telling my mom, look, this is just like Gram's family. And my sister loved it so much that she wrote a letter to the author, Sydney Taylor, who unfortunately had passed away. She was one of the sisters. In the book, her character was Sarah. She had passed away, but her husband, Ralph, wrote my sister back a couple letters, and we always thought that was really cool. So All the Kind Family, it was a great little sentimental step back to my childhood. The book itself, every chapter was just a little nugget of something that happens in their family, like one chapter was how the mother would hide pennies in their dining room so that she could tell if the girls dusted well enough. So every Saturday or Sunday when it was or whatever day it was dusting day, she would go in and hide a few pennies, and if they dusted really well, they would find them and then they could keep them. So that was the extent. That's what the chapters were like, and to me it was just super sweet and I loved it. And yeah, All the Kind Family by Sydney Taylor. If you have a child who likes old-fashioned stories, it would be really cute to read at night too. Probably little girls. Well, I hate to be sexist. I don't know. It is a family of girls, but if you have a child who really enjoys back in the day kind of stories, they would like it. Okay, so the last book I read, so I did really good. I usually set a goal to read 5 books a month. And I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books this month. So I was doing pretty good. But the last book that I read was the one that I enjoyed the least, and it is called The Reader. It is by Bernard Schlink. I gave it 3 stars. I finished it because I really wanted to see what happened, but I can't say that I read it with enjoyment. So it follows this character, Michael Berg, at the beginning of the story. He's young, he's about 15, and he falls ill while he's out and about in the city. He lives in Germany, and this woman named Hannah, she's twice his age, she helps him back to his house and, kind of gives him to his mother. And the boy falls for her, and he goes back to her, and they wind up becoming lovers. He falls in love with her. And they call the book The Reader because what she enjoys most about the time that they spend together is that she asks him to read to her. This does play an important part in the book later on. I won't give it away, but he spends a lot of time choosing books and reading to her in the little bit of time that they spend together. And then one day he goes to her house and she's gone. She just kind of has disappeared, and he doesn't see her again for years. The next time he sees her, he is a law student, and his class has been sent to view the trials of Nazi criminals. And Hannah is on trial for war crimes. It really does look at the shame that many Germans felt after World War II about what happened to the Jewish people in concentration camps. It examines this love affair between this man and this woman. It was very one-sided, but it really does affect his entire life. It was an interesting book, which is why I kept reading it. I really wanted to see how it was all going to end. I was surprised by the ending. It's not a feel-good story in any way, shape, or form. It does move slowly. And you don't really like Michael was not a favorite character of mine. I didn't love him. I really didn't like Hannah. Even though it was told from Michael's point of view, I felt like you really didn't get a good glimpse into him, except where it pertained to Hannah. So I give it three stars. You might enjoy it, but it's a book that I will never read again. And it was just okay, and I did not love it, and yeah, it is what it is. But hey, I finished it because I wanted to see what was going to happen, so I guess that says something, right? So those are the books that I read for August. We'll see how I do in September. I hesitate to do a TBR. I don't know what's going to be happening in September. Right now, though, I am reading Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. I wanted to read a book that has been banned in some places. And so I'm reading that by Mildred Taylor. I remember reading it as a child, but it has been banned before. I'm also reading Beloved, but that's been slow going. It's not a book that I'm going, oh, I can't wait to read it. It's not a book that I'm choosing to pick up. I'm choosing to pick up other books. So we'll see about a September TBR, but thanks for being here and happy reading, everybody. See you on the next video.